our next presenter is one of the best runners that Mozilla has. He ran marathons, like 4 or 5 already, in Honolulu, and I have to read this, Liverpool, Brighton, Jersey, and as I mentioned before, Honolulu. His plan for this year is to run in London and in Berlin. And if we had till now people that were like furniture sellers or casino dealers, Dave had a job previously in bouncing castles. And one cool thing about him and his children is that they have 120 Lego minifigures. I don't want to see a picture of that, so welcome, Dave.
Okay, so I was going to be doing this presentation with Henrik Scooping. Unfortunately, he's not here because he has sickness in his family, so he's home looking after them. But I do have a substitute. And so this talk is the puppet show, and we have this little guy. So until today, this guy didn't have a name, and I'm going to name him Henrik. So here's Henrik. And I also want to thank Henrik for putting together most of these slides. He's done the majority of the work with this. So. I did joke about I would put on a German accent as well for one of his parts, but you don't need that. Okay, so I'm going to talk about automating Firefox using Selenium and a couple of the tools that go along with that, which is the GeckoDriver and WebDriver. So topics I'll be covering. Browser automation with Selenium, a little bit about what is the Firefox driver, what is the successor for the Firefox driver, and then finally I'll be introducing FoxPuppet. So browser automation with Selenium. So Selenium is a suite of tools for browser automation. It's most commonly used to write tests for web applications. That's not its only use. Essentially, there's an API for controlling browsers, so it simulates a user interacting with the browser, which actually opens up lots of possibilities, from things like playing games with the browser, within the browser, playing musical instruments online. But yeah, most commonly it's for testing. It supports all major web browsers, so Firefox, Chrome, Safari, Internet Explorer, and Edge. There are multiple clients, each of them provide a WebDriver API. So the official clients are Python, Java, Ruby, JavaScript, and .NET. There are also a few unofficial client bindings, such as there's a number of PHP bindings, Perl as well, and others. So an overview of how it works. You have your clients over here. So you have your Java, Python, JavaScript client. These talk to a driver. In majority of browsers, this driver is a binary. It's running in the system. That's responsible for launching the browser, forwarding commands to it, and the browser then carries out those interactions, those commands. For Firefox, it's been a little different. It's actually one of the earlier drivers, and it was built as a Firefox extension. So that's why you have the separation here. So Firefox driver is a specific driver for controlling Firefox. It was built as a Firefox add-on, but when Firefox is launched by Selenium, the add-on is installed and enabled. This add-on is unlisted, it's not on add-ons to Mozilla.org, and it's also unsigned. The reason for that is it's a security concern. Effectively, if you have this add-on installed, your browser could be controlled by something on your network. It's been maintained by the Selenium community, and Mozilla have never officially supported it or contributed to it. So an example of some code that would control Firefox in this case, this may not be particularly readable, but let's see. So we import, this is Python, so we import the Firefox class here, we instantiate an object we're calling Selenium, and then we're calling the get method here, and we're getting the addons.mozilla.org website. Then Selenium essentially is locating and interacting with elements. So we're finding an element by its ID, search, and we're sending +++. And so we're searching, essentially, the next one here finds the search button and clicks it. So we're searching for the .go extension. The background here is faded out there, but it's a screenshot of what would be the result of running that code. So unfortunately, or fortunately, it turned out, the Firefox driver has been deprecated since Firefox 48. And that's because Firefox 48 will not allow add-ons to be installed unless they are signed. So the Selenium project decided not to sign the add-on, which they could have done. Fortunately, we have another solution, and a much better one, and that's Marionette and GeckoDriver. So Marionette was first introduced in 2012 for the Firefox OS project, which was our operating system for mobile devices. It is an automation framework for Gecko-based applications. Last time I was in FOSDEM, Henrik and I gave a talk about automating Firefox OS, and we were using Marionette in that talk. It's now directly built into Firefox and Fennec being our Android version of Firefox. And it can control both the Chrome and content space. So typically Selenium is for interacting with the content space, that is your web applications, websites. Marionette has the ability to escape that and go into Chrome, and that's basically everything else that's in the browser interface. So your tab bar, your URL bar, buttons, etc. And the method of communication for this is via TCP sockets. GeckoDriver is a proxy for what is the WebDriver specification. So the WebDriver specification is something that started, the discussion on the spec started around 2009. It's been co-authored by David Burns and Simon Stewart. David Burns with Mozilla, and Simon at the time, I think, was Google. And the idea of the specification is that any browser implementing the spec can be automated. So the spec is now in, or it's close, I believe within a week it's going to hit a candidate recommendation. And the goal is that this will be a recommendation by the end of this quarter. The huge win we had with this, and we felt that it was the only way in which we would get this, is by making it a specification. Selenium now has been adopted, or the WebDriver spec has been adopted by all major browser vendors, which means that the Selenium project itself doesn't need to worry about how to interact with and automate all of the browsers. Selenium only really needs to implement the WebDriver spec, and the browser vendors are providing a compliant driver or browser for that. So it means that we now have support from Apple, from Microsoft, and so it's actually the browser vendors doing this. So GeckoDriver is a HTTP API that complies with the spec, and it translates the calls that it receives for use with Marionette. So Marionette is able to automate Firefox or any Gecko-based application, and GeckoDriver receives the spec-compliant commands, translates them so that they can be carried out with Marionette. And it's not yet feature complete. So this is partly because the spec is in the late stages of candidate recommendation. There have been some relatively late landing changes, so this should be soon. Hopefully soon it should be feature complete, and I believe GeckoDriver may be the first complete implementation of the spec. So this is what the diagram changes to, much more consistent. We now have Firefox in amongst all the other browsers, and we just have the driver. So in our case, this is GeckoDriver for Firefox, it's ChromeDriver for Chrome, it's Safari driver for Safari, etc. And those drivers being provided by the browser vendors also means that they're responsible for fixing and making sure that there are no regressions. And the other cool thing is there's no test changes necessary. So the Selenium clients on this side will start using the WebDriver specification and the drivers will understand it. So you don't need to change your code, I think. So, so introducing Fox Puppet. So, Fox Puppet allows you to interact with Firefox using Selenium. Which is kind of what we already said, but here it's actually Firefox itself. Like I said, Marionette can do more than just what Selenium offers. It allows you to switch into the Chrome context and interact with the buttons, the URL bar, etc. And so by extending the WebDriver spec in GeckoDriver, it allows us to do more. So what Fox Puppet is, it's a Python package with a simple API that allows you to locate and interact with the Firefox UI. It supports the latest Firefox release and pre-releases, and from the next version of extended support release 52, that will also be supported. So the idea is that if you're using Fox Puppet, you should be able to use any of the latest versions of Firefox. And ultimately, it's going to be used to test Firefox itself. At the moment, it's probably going to be used for testing things like installing add-ons, extensions, but we'll be using it for Firefox UI. So here's some code which is actually meant to be not very easily readable, because it's demonstrating how you would install an add-on without using Fox Puppet. So things to highlight here is similar to before. We're getting a web page, we're finding an element. That element happens with the install button for an extension. And here we're switching the context. So it's with Selenium context of Chrome. So anything within this indentation is now going to happen in the Chrome space. And then essentially what we're doing is we're getting a notification. So when you click install an add-on, you get a little door hanger notification drops down. You need to click install, and then you get a confirmation. So here we are clicking the install button on that first notification, and then we're finding the next notification, and we're clicking the close button on that. This code wouldn't actually work. It would actually be more of a base. Most likely we would have to have explicit waits here, because as soon as you click the install button of the add-on, you don't instantly get this notification. You first want to wait for that to appear, then you can interact with it. Then you've got to wait for the next notification to appear, and you can interact with that. But this is the code with Fox Puppet. So we'll instantiate a Fox Puppet instance here. It has a browser property in there, which basically is our initial browser window. That's all we're using in this demo code. Again, we're using Selenium to open up a web page. This is all happening in content space. We're finding our button, so click install. And then these two lines here is all that we're doing with Fox Puppet. We're saying browser, wait for the notification. We're specifying the notification that we're expecting, and we're clicking install. We're calling the install method here. And then after that's done, we're ready for the add-on install complete notification, and we're clicking close on that. So here's a short video just showing that happening. I've slowed it down, but maybe not enough. So we're clicking this button here. We're waiting for this, and then clicking install. We're waiting for this, and then clicking close. So those are all done by running that last piece of code. I can run it again.
Excuse me, could you move your microphone to the other side?
Is that better? Okay, thank you. Yeah, so that's FoxPuppet. At the moment, FoxPuppet supports simple window management and interacting with notifications. I saw a pull request this morning that adds some support for the tab bar and tabs. There's a lot more to add. One of the advantages of building our automation for Firefox itself on Selenium means that we take advantage of the wealth of Selenium experience that contributors may have, and hopefully attract people to help us to write those tests and build out our tools, our tests, and our framework. Any questions? I'm not sure how I'm doing for time. Yes?
Does it work headlessly as well, or is it always sharing a window?
Okay, the question is, does it work headlessly? No, because you can't run Firefox headlessly. I mean, you can run this, you can run Selenium in Docker, which effectively makes it headless. You can run using XFB on Linux, and that effectively makes it headless, but no, there's no true headless mode for Firefox at this time.
Do you have an example using WebGL?
The question is, do I have an example using WebGL? No, I don't. Sorry.
Would that be a problem?
I don't have enough experience with WebGL. I mean, when you're talking about Selenium and web documents, really you're locating elements in the DOM and interacting with them. So if something doesn't appear as an element in the DOM, it can be quite difficult to do, but not impossible. I've had some experience using Canvas that has that kind of issue. It's just one element and you can't see the details within that. The way I've worked around that in the past is to, for the application to provide some data that is only really exposed, the intention is only exposed to the test. And we can execute JavaScript, we can get information about the current state of the application, and based on that we can interact. We can send keyboard keys, we can also use the mouse to click. There's also an advanced interactions API that is not yet complete in GeckoDriver, but will allow much richer mouse interactions as well. But you need to get some information out of either the DOM or maybe JavaScript, something like that, to be able to interact with. Yes?
Can you use FoxPuppet to interact with the browser applications, like the microphone?
So the little notifications that pop up asking whether you want to share permissions for. So the question was, can you use FoxPuppet to interact with the permissions notifications in Firefox? I would only say no, because at the moment we haven't written regions or objects that represent those, but there is no reason why that wouldn't be possible. And most likely we would do that as soon as we want to migrate some of our existing tests that test that works. So yeah, it should be fine. Okay. Yes?
What about asynchronous JavaScript execution? Do you have any examples of what that looks like when running through FoxPuppet?
So Selenium has two methods for
Can you repeat the question?
Sorry, yes. The question was about executing asynchronous JavaScript. So Selenium has two methods. The WebDriver spec has two methods. One is execute JavaScript or execute script. The other one is execute asynchronous script. So they're both possible with Selenium, and because they're possible with Selenium, they're therefore possible with anything that builds on top of that. Yes?
How would it interact with cross-site requests? Would there be the same restrictions as current Firefox?
So the question was, how would it deal with cross-site scripting? So I believe the cross-site scripting used to be a problem when Selenium was essentially all built on JavaScript, but now that it's built effectively into the browsers, it's no longer a problem. I'm not sure about executing script. So typically I find I rarely need to do the execute script using Selenium. Because Selenium is tools for simulating a user. So if a user can't do it using something that's on screen, there are other ways of doing it, such as executing script, but typically you're then not quite using Selenium for its intended purposes. So typically I would say, if a user can't do it, although you might be able to do it with Selenium, there might be issues with that also. Okay. Thank you. Slides are available online. There's some contact details for me and Henrik. So if anybody has any questions, please get in touch. If anybody's interested in helping us to build out Fox Puppet or to work on migrating our tests to using it, then that would be appreciated. That'd be great. Thank you.